Cycle boy. I think a wee tiny miniature superhero. Cycle boy. PJ Mask or something. Alan, I was sure you never got again.
Turn away.
We don't normally get to do
Really?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second meeting of the board in June. We know how much the Chief Constable has enjoyed coming to the board meetings, so we decided in June that we would have to have two for him and make sure that he had his final session today before his retirement. We're going to have a slightly reduced public session today because we have other business this afternoon, so we're aiming to try and finish about 1:15. But before we move into the main business, Chief, I just want to offer you congratulations on your recent honour. Well done, now Sir George, and also the honorary degree for service in policing. If you were staying on, I would have to remember to call you Dr. Sir George Hamilton. I think that would be a bit numb. It's hard to believe that it's 5 years since you took up the position of Chief Constable. I know my hairstyle's changed quite a bit since then. I'm not sure about yours, it's much the same as it was. But a lot has happened in the space of 5 years, and then of course other things haven't changed very much at all. I'm sure that you will have a few parting reflections for us. And we all know that a lot can happen in a month, and since our last meeting we had the landmark judgment in the holiday pay case, so we will have questions around that. So we're almost back to the kind of questions you got in your first meeting in 2014. But before we move to the questions, I'd like to invite you, Chief, just if you want to make a few comments.
Thank you, Chair. It's nice to be get the opportunity to say a few words at this, my final board meeting. So I suppose a few reflections. It's hard not to appear to be self-congratulatory or patting oneself on the back, which my parents always told me was of limited value. But I think with this team sat around me and with the police officers and staff across the organisation having been committed in a very directed, focused way over the last 5 years together, working with communities, I think quite a lot has been achieved. I want to cover some of those, but I suppose the headlines for me would be if somebody had told me on day one appointment, we're going to take £150 million off your baseline budget, you know, £150 million a year less to spend. We expect you to drive crime down, underreported crime up, increase confidence in policing, reduce police complaints, and make the organisation more diverse and more representative than it has ever been. I probably wouldn't have had the self-belief to accept the job, but actually this team, PSNI, this executive team, the Superintendents Association, the Police Federation, men and women, officers and staff right across the organisation, despite the many challenges and sometimes the mistakes that we have made, have worked collaboratively, have worked in partnership across the organisation and externally with communities, with other statutory organisations, with the voluntary sector, to actually deliver a performance that I lead the organisation been very proud of. The first point, I suppose, formally asking the board to note is that in the context of those financial cuts, a number of years ago when we first introduced the PEAL, that is the Efficiency, Effectiveness and Leadership Inspection, legitimacy inspections by HMIC, we had a number of areas that required improvement. So the most recently published report shows that we're good across all areas, and HMIC actually comments on the fact that we have achieved that in the most difficult and turbulent of financial times. So I think that is a positive, and of course we've been helped along the way in that by the support and scrutiny from this board, as you have challenged us and held us to account in the areas that previously required improvement. But I am pleased to report that we have now achieved good across all categories. I mentioned the sort of the crime figures we've had. The end of year crime figures, that's up to the end of the last financial year, the 31st of March, and crime has remained low. Antisocial behaviour, for example, is now at its lowest level, so we've seen a significant reduction, and we forecast that recorded crime will continue to decline. More harmful types of crime, more complex, less visible crimes, of course, require more complex investigation, more specialised capabilities, and I think that shows a certain agility within the organisation to flex towards those growing and evolving demands. There could be, I think, and I don't think it would be wise to take too much comfort from simply recorded crime figures, but we need to look at the nature of that and the changing complexity of it. There's some areas that over my tenure we have worked to increase the reporting of, specifically sexual offences, domestic abuse, hate crime, cyber-enabled crime. And in this context, an increase in crime reporting is actually, it indicates greater confidence in policing. It gives us better data, better intelligence to know how to target our resources. And we've seen, for example, in relation to the reporting of domestic abuse, we've seen an increase of 11.4% in that type of crime compared to the previous 12 months. Likewise, serious sexual offences, massive spikes in reporting. We don't believe that there's necessarily any greater harm out there than there was previously. What we do think is happening is greater confidence to report to police taking this seriously, and we have shown that through the creation of Public Protection Branch, which I think is another significant achievement of the last 5 years, where we have really professionalised that approach to dealing with the most vulnerable in our society, whether it's child sexual exploitation, domestic abuse, serious sexual offending, or indeed adult safeguarding. So I suppose the increase in confidence that has marked not just the recent period of reporting, but indeed my tenure, I think, is a demonstration of the level of effective accountability that now exists in policing. We reported to the board, for example, just last week on our use of force statistics in the last year. And the fact that we're a fully armed police service, regrettably still a fully armed police service, but we have not discharged a single firearm in 12 months. I think that's notable, and I think it's an indication of the careful human rights training that supports the split-second decision that officers on the front line are expected to make every day. And speaking of the front line, clearly this is a time of year when sometimes tensions rise for one reason or another, whether it's parades or bonfires. I suppose the theme this year seems to be flags and emblems and posters and so on. I know that there's been considerable public comment about the displaying of flags in recent weeks, and I understand the importance of this issue and also how sensitive it is, and I don't want to say anything today publicly that will make that situation any worse, but the debate about flags, emblems, murals, memorials, these are all unresolved post-conflict issues. Political leaders recognised the importance of addressing these in the Stormont House Agreement, and that's why they established the Commission on Flags, Identity, Culture and Tradition. That was established over 2 years ago. There's a significant investment that's been made on it. The police service, whether under my leadership or the next chief, needs that commission to succeed. I think political leadership needs it to succeed, and certainly local communities do. But it's not a straightforward issue. And I think it's important that all of us in leadership responsibilities, whether political, faith, civic, business, community, all of us use whatever influence we have, whatever public commentary that we can make to diffuse the situation rather than exacerbate it. What is offensive to some is wholly acceptable to other people. It's in this context that we will continue to work within the confines of our flag protocol and are as eager to have the issue resolved politically as anyone else. I think it is significant to note, and part of the concern that we have, that the flags protocol across all the various departments, the executive flags protocol, has been with the executive office for a decade, and we still have these problems, and we still feel like the ball is landing at our feet, and we're facing the criticism around what's removed and what's not removed and so on. This is a far bigger political and societal issue in which the police have a role to play, and we'll not be found wanting on that, but actually it is a bigger issue than just policing. So Chair, our time's limited, and in order to get to questions, I should probably conclude there. It is finally beginning to sink in. There's just a few days I will retire, not just as Chief Constable, but as a police officer. And being a police officer is a job that I've taken huge pride in. But without doubt, it has been the privilege of my career to be the Chief Constable. So I was reminded today about how my colleagues provide a selfless, courageous, brave service to all of the community. Yesterday evening, the duty sergeant in Causeway Coast in Glens saved the life of a man near Dunluce Castle by entering the water to bring him to safety. Just a couple of weeks ago, colleagues, along with a member of the public, entered the water in Lough Erne to save a woman who was trapped in her car just outside of Kesh. Two reminders of the service that goes on a daily basis that makes me very proud to have been the Chief Constable. And I also want to thank the board for the accountability that you have provided to policing during my tenure. I gave a commitment to you 5 years ago that I would be open with you, I'd be transparent, I would try to find a reason to share information rather than to withhold it. We haven't always agreed on everything, but I know that I have been true to that commitment, and I hope it has been evident to you. Even during the time when the board was not formally constituted, Chair, you and the Vice Chair, the independent members, the Chief Executive, worked hard to ensure that policing was held to account. And we too wanted to be held to account. We made ourselves available, and we tried to carry on with business as usual. And I think that was to the betterment of public service and to the communities and for confidence in policing, that even though the political paralysis meant that the board was not formally constituted, together we made the accountability arrangement work. And with that accountability in mind, Chair, I'll hand back to you for questions.
And I'm just putting you rightly have listed many of the achievements that have happened. What would you say is your legacy, your personal legacy to the PSNI?
Well, I don't know really. I suppose it's not personal because I wouldn't claim the credit for it, but it's that point that I made at the start. If somebody had said, let's take 150 million out of your budget, reduce crime, increase confidence, reduce complaints, be more diverse, I would have said you need to find somebody else to do that. I don't claim the personal credit for that, other than the fact that we all have a leadership role to play. But that has been achieved. You know, we have done some pretty crazy things in terms of their scale. You and I, Chair, had the opportunity to formally open a cyber crime centre, a £4.3 million capital investment that means that we are absolutely cutting edge in terms of policing and law enforcement across Europe and tackling cybercrime. I think culturally, and in terms of recruitment and growing capabilities around cyber more generally, there's still a piece of work to do. But actually, there's big achievements in there. The creation of a public protection branch. We didn't have that 5 years ago. We've professionalised that. We've brought it together. We've had independent review that tells us that, you know, we're doing a good job, albeit we've never become complacent. But none of that I claim as a personal achievement, other than the fact that I had the honour to lead the organisation. The people sat this side of the table, and indeed the staff associations and others working collectively have enabled, I think, some significant achievements. And there are other areas where success has not been possible. It stops short of the frustration word, but I did say in the early months that if we didn't deal with legacy, it risked dragging policing and the peace process backwards. We collectively, particularly the political leaders, have not dealt with the legacy issue, and it is a challenge for policing. It's a negative impact on public confidence in policing. It detracts from policing for today, and actually, more importantly than the impacts on policing, the impact on families and victims who are waiting for answers and for closure and for justice. 5 years after I started this job, really, we're not much further on, despite lots of activity and effort on behalf of the police service, but we do need those institutions of the Stormont House Agreement to be brought to fruition. So it's a long way of saying that I don't really take personal credit for the achievements, and nor do I take a personal sense of failure for the things that have been beyond my control, like legacy.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move to Alan Chambers for the first question.
Yes, Chief Constable, just I want to take this public opportunity on behalf of the Ulster Unionist Party to express our thanks and appreciation for your service to this community. My question, Chief Constable, is that earlier in the year, your team gave us a comprehensive report on the planning and the preparations the PSNI were making in readiness for any eventualities created by Brexit. I appreciate the continued uncertainty around this serious topic. Can you give the board a current update on your planning, and can you confirm if reopening some border police stations form part of your forward planning?
Yes, well, Brexit is one of those things that has touched all of our professional lives quite significantly, and it's been a challenge to talk about consequences without taking what some may interpret as a political position. And of course, I have personally been accused of over-egging it at times. I'm satisfied that we haven't done that. We've acted in a measured way. We've been foolish not to have planned and create contingencies. And I think the team has pulled together in a very strong way. Everybody's been in behind. Stephen Martin is the SRO for Brexit. And sitting underneath that, and there's lots of political engagement goes on into Whitehall and into the Northern Ireland Civil Service, the executive, if we had one, and all of that. But Mark Hamilton leads on the sort of operational activity, what will actually happen operationally in policing and borders and all of that in around the actual EU exit date. And then Tim Mayer's looking more at the longer term strategic policy issues and so on. So I think we're in a reasonable state of readiness. It feels like there's been a little bit of a pause pressed because of the extension to 31st of October because of the Tory leadership election, but we have been sitting on our laurels. Stephen, do you want to add to that?
Yes, so I would seek to give you reassurance that our work on planning and preparing for Brexit has been thorough and comprehensive. And when the EU exit didn't materialise at the end of March, whilst we slowed the pace of that preparation down, we kept it going, and in recent weeks we've started to escalate the extent of that preparation again. The two operational names, Nebraska and Cookhouse, to cut through that and give you a little bit about those. There's sort of 5 fundamental purposes to the work that we're engaged in. One is to oversee the PSNI's corporate risk, operational preparedness, legal, regulatory and policy compliance. We want to ensure effective coordination across the police service and indeed with external partners to identify and address EU exit related risks and issues. We want to ensure that key stakeholder interests are represented. We want to ensure that PSNI is prepared for operating in a post-EU exit environment, maintaining and enhancing our service. And we want to develop policy on EU-related risks and issues for use both internally and externally with law enforcement and criminal justice partners. So that cuts across everything. We're heavily engaged into London, in Whitehall. Just last week you will have seen media coverage about the creation of a technical committee to start looking at alternative arrangements around the land border. Tim Mayers is representing us at that. The Intergovernmental Committee between the British and Irish Parliaments visited us last week, and I engaged with them. So everything from ensuring that we will have fuel for our vehicles in the event of a disorganised EU exit, right through to what will our operational profile look like on the ground on the 1st of November if there was an EU exit, either by withdrawal agreement or by disorganised withdrawal. And everything in between. We're looking at alternative arrangements if we were to lose the facility of European arrest warrants. What will we do if we don't have access to European criminal record systems, the Schengen information system where we exchange information around wanted persons? We're looking at backstop arrangements for all that. So I would safely say that in terms of UK policing, PLC, we're as prepared as any police service But of course, I would want to stress the qualification that all our preparations are going forward in the midst of significant uncertainty. And so we're trying to prepare for a whole spectrum of eventualities. But within that uncertainty, I think we are well prepared. On the point of the police stations, we have no plans at this time to open new police stations in and around the border area. And the 3 stations that we put a pause on disposal, Warren Point, Auckland and Castlereagh, that pause is still in place, but we would have high hopes that in the aftermath of EU exit that we will be able to carry on with their disposal. But I just think at this point, because of the uncertainty, it's prudent to just keep that real estate and make that decision when we have more information. But I want to stress that we have started to recruit quite heavily the additional police officers and the smaller number of police staff, that we are benefiting from the £16.48 million of extra money that we were given specifically for this issue. A large number of those officers will go into the border area, but they're going to go in to work with communities in a community policing profile, problem solving, neighbourhood police teams. The last thing the PSNI wants to do is in any way be seen to securitise or increase a negative profile in and around the border. Our position is one of reassurance, working with communities and supporting our partners with whatever the eventuality looks like.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I move on. Linda.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a comment rather than a question. And first of all, I'd just like to put on record that I wish you all the best in the future, and our party wish you all the best in the future, George, and thank you for what you have undertaken over the last number of years. Just to suppose to put something right, and I'm not saying that it was your intention, but whenever you talked about legacy, you talked about the failure of political leaders, and I just want it on record and to be very clear for everybody in this room. Political leaders have dealt with the legacy issue here in the north. The delay has been created by the British government. And I know that it probably wasn't your intention, because I have spoken to you about this before and the need for PSNI to make the case to the British government that their delay in dealing with the legacy, that their delay in bringing forward the legislation is causing major problems for the PSNI and for current day policing. It is in fact poisoning current day policing in every possible way, because obviously it's a financial drain, and that's a major issue for the PSNI. But it's also a massive issue in some constituencies around confidence, and that's right across the board. That's not just in Nationalist and Republican constituencies. And it is also an issue around recruitment and representativeness within the PSNI. And I don't think any of us want to see that. But I want to be very clear that as far as I'm aware, and unless somebody in this room from a political party dissents from this view, the parties agreed the Stormont House mechanisms. We want to see the legacy mechanisms implemented. The delay is with the British government and the British government only. Thank you.
Well, I hear your comments on that. I don't speak on behalf of the British government or any political party. All I'm saying is that 5 years ago, laying out my stall and how I foresaw the next 5 years, I said that if we didn't, and I said we, I mean everybody in a position of responsibility, did not get this matter resolved, it was going to be detrimental to policing, and it could even be detrimental to the peace process. I stand by those comments. I don't know, I'm not party to the current negotiations. I know that we did a very fulsome response to the Stormont House bill. I haven't heard, even informally, any analysis of that yet. As far as I'm concerned, it's sitting in there in the mix, part of the political discussions, and frankly, the quicker he's concerned now, the better for policing and for society. And I'm not apportioning blame to any of their local groups or the British government or anybody else. I'm saying in a general sense, those who have the responsibility politically to make this happen, I'm appealing at the end of my tenure, as it at the start, to please do so, because it's in everybody's interest, not least of all the people who need answers and closure and justice for the loss of their loved ones.
Thank you very much. Mervyn Storey.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make comment on the previous comments first by saying it'll not be lost in any of the members in this room the irony of one party on this board and politically talking about delays, given the fact that we have had no government in Northern Ireland for 2.5 years because they decided to walk out and to pull the institutions down, of which this board is a part of. However, they were able to construct an argument to come back onto this board. They will answer for why they were partial in relation to the way that they deal with their politics. Moving on from that, George, can I, on behalf of my colleagues on the DUP members of the board, and also on behalf of my party, express to you our best wishes on your retirement. And we trust that you will have a long and enjoyable retirement because you have given much, you have sacrificed much in terms of your time in relation to your family to fulfil your duties as the Chief Constable. And while on occasions we have disagreed, you can be assured, as can your successor, that we will continue to publicly support the rule of law and the PSNI in the discharge of their duties. In your last report to this board, you state that you are proud independent surveys continue to show confidence in policing remains high. Given your recent comments regarding amnesty, will you recognise today, as you leave the PSNI, the hurt that you have caused to many right-thinking families, particularly families of former serving members of the RUC, who have not got closure or justice for the horrendous crimes that were carried out against them, and that if we want to see in Northern Ireland a peaceful, law-abiding society, it cannot be built upon the premise of breaking the law, of distorting justice, and giving letters of comfort or keys to the doors of the prison to let those who have committed the most heinous crimes off the hook and back out in to become, in some cases, community leaders. And will you today, George, reflect on the hurt that has been caused to many people who believe in the right of the law to prevail, to ensure that those who are responsible for crime are not given a get out of jail card free, but are pursued by the police, and the assurance that your officers and your successor will continue to vigorously pursue terrorism from wherever it comes.
Well, thank you for your kind comments. Mervyn, although I have to admit to being a little bit confused, because I get literally hundreds of emails and letters each day, and I haven't seen any surge in letters of hurt or offence caused by me in relation to amnesty. Not only that, I'm at a bit of a loss as to what comments you're actually talking about. I am not advocating for amnesty for anybody. What I've said is that we should all be equal under the law, and we should all be subject to the law, whether it's politician, police officer, soldier, journalist, or whoever, terrorist indeed. So I am very clear in terms of my respect for the rule of law and its equal application to all citizens, regardless of what office or position they hold. I think where the confusion may have arisen, I was asked in a recent interview about comments made by the Attorney General about 6 years ago, actually, where he advocated for a discussion on drawing a line under things, because actually it was unlikely that there would be significant criminal justice outcomes in a number of cases. That was dismissed in quite emotive terms, not dissimilar to your challenge just to me just now. The former Director of Public Prosecutions has said that from a legal perspective, he doesn't think the Stormont House Agreement can work. I have said in relation to his comments that I think he is pessimistic. I think there's a way of making it work. I do think he's got valid points to make around sequencing of which elements of truth recovery and getting answers to questions and learning lessons and criminal justice outcomes. There clearly needs to be sequencing so that the criminal justice process doesn't get compromised. On both of those issues, I have said that I think those, particularly in political leadership, dismissed the debate too quickly. Everybody ran to, that's an amnesty, and I'm not advocating for that. I don't personally believe in an amnesty. I don't think it'll help. I don't think it'll bring closure. But I am happy to take my personal position and the organisation's position and not advocating for it. Set it there, look at the reality of how many of these cases are going to be brought to a criminal justice outcome. Even because of what you politicians ended up agreeing to with letting all the prisoners out after they'd served 2 years, that doesn't feel like me to be justice, even though I agreed and I voted for it and I thought it was a price worth paying in order to secure the peace. It was uncomfortable. It was not necessarily where my values naturally took me, that you could commit multiple murders and be out of prison within 2 years. That is still the case. So it's not an amnesty, but it's not a kick in the pants off it either. And what I was advocating was a mature, reasoned debate about likelihood of conviction. Even if you get conviction, the maximum sentence is going to be 2 years. That was the political deal. That's not a police perspective. The fact that the politicians agreed in a decommissioning process that all us citizens got a chance to vote for and voted overwhelmingly in favour of, and I think it was a price worth paying. But you voted to bury, to decommission the forensic evidence. That's what the Belfast Agreement catered for. So you've got the forensic evidence buried, you've got a criminal justice process that's only going to allow people to do 2 years maximum prison. And I think, I'm not advocating for an amnesty, and you've accused me of that, and I want to put the record straight on that. What I have said, set alongside those other things that were uncomfortable for many citizens to bear, but actually supported in their referendum, sitting alongside that is a debate about drawing a line or drawing an amnesty. And all I'm saying is that I think we should be progressive enough. I think the political leadership should be courageous enough to publicly have that discourse, have that debate. Because what I'm hearing in private, I'm not going to name any individuals, but what I'm hearing in private is an analysis which sits firmly with me across the political spectrum, consistent with what I'm saying, and then publicly I get quite emotive and emotional responses about people jumping to conclusions and misinterpreting what I'm saying. I'm not advocating for an amnesty, but I do think that the comments by the Attorney General and the former Director of Public Prosecutions warrant further mature debate with the emotion left outside the room.
Okay, I think we'll move on because
Just clarify, just welcome the clarification, but your majorative term is inaccurate because you as politicians who supported letting prisoners out and doing the decommissioning and burying the evidence was not supported by me, my vote, or my party's votes. We opposed all of those and we continue to oppose. All I want to see is to ensure, and I welcome the clarification, Jordan, because we cannot have a situation in Northern Ireland where some citizens have privilege and protection when they've committed the most heinous of crimes.
Okay, thank you. Luke?
Full of that, eh?
That's why I chose you next.
Thank you very much. Let's see if you get quite so passionate about this subject, Chief Constable. Holiday pay. With the court ruling recently about the fact that the holiday pay was going to have to be readdressed in terms of overtime, etc., being added in. and we're told that about £40 million is the likely hit to the PSNI. Can I ask you what the next steps are, either in terms of finding that 40 million, if that is an accurate figure, or indeed challenging the ruling? And are you involving other parties? Because we realise that the ramifications of this are much wider than the PSNI, include civil service, public sector, and indeed private sector companies as well.
Well, thank you, Doug. It's a lovely relief to get a good governance question about money and risk and things. Yes, so we are where we are with it. I need to be careful what I say, because I don't want to either appear to be abdicating my responsibilities towards the new Chief Constable, nor undermining him by taking a decision that would fetter any instructions he would want to give lawyers. We have a window through until I think it's next Friday, so 10 days away, when we need to decide whether we will appeal the judgment or seek to appeal it to the Supreme Court. I have taken senior counsel advice on that. I've had a conversation with the incoming chief about it. There's a number of deliberations. We accept that our workforce are entitled under the law that changed a few years ago to this holiday pay, or their holiday pay being reflective of their average overtime remuneration. The technicalities about how far that goes back and what the divisor is about how many days and whether it applies to sickness absence as well as annual leave, all of those things mean that it's not straightforward. And you know, what I can say is that we have from April of this year, in fact April of last year, only recently paid but backdated to April of 18, we have been paying this overtime holiday pay, and we accept that principle. This is around the detail of how far back it reaches, how that would be managed, whether it's, you know, taking an average of 365 days in the year or 261, which is the working days in the year. The court has taken a view, the current judgment, against us in that favour. In that matter, we as a senior leadership of the organisation don't want to be unreasonable with a very hard-working workforce, and I'm conscious that the chair of the Police Federation sat behind me. We want to be reasonable around all of this. We don't dispute the point that holiday pay, overtime built into holiday pay, is now a legal entitlement, but it's around the detail of what that looks like the retrospective nature, and we are currently considering how we respond to that judgment, whether by way of appeal or by way of negotiation through lawyers on behalf of the claimants towards settlement. I think ultimately there will be a form of settlement in this, and any point of appeal would be around the reasonableness of the retrospective nature and of the divisor and of things like that. So it's not whether or not the claimants are going to receive holiday pay, it's going to be the extent of the retrospective nature and I suppose the factor by which that's averaged out, depending on how many days you consider to be in a year actual or a working year. The other part of your question, you're right, the repercussions right across the public sector are massive. The £40 million is thrown out there by lawyers on behalf of the claimants that I can imagine they'll not be wanting to minimise the figure. The problem that we have is getting the lawyers to prove our liability on this, and we get these headline figures picked out of the air without any calculation or science behind them. I think the £40 million is a guess. And for all I know, it could be more. Actually, I don't think they know. But it's going to be certainly, you know, tens, if not hundreds of millions of pounds across the entire public sector, if the current judgment stands. So there is massive repercussions from this if it's not challenged. I don't know that we will necessarily appeal. We're still taking advice and giving that consideration. But there is an interdepartmental working group on this with right across the public sector. Mark McNaughton represents us on that, and there are people with a financial and a legal background helping to navigate a sort of government-wide approach to this, because I'm all up for people being properly remunerated for their work, and if to live by the rules is a good thing to do if you're a police officer. But actually, if say the figure is 40 million for policing, and then you've got health and education and all the various parts of the broader civil service that have overtime earning employees. And this could reach into the private sector as well, actually, but that's something I worry at the moment. So the repercussions of this are massive, but for us, say the 40 million is right by way of example, that money is going to have to come from somewhere in public service delivery. So it's not as if there's some bottomless pot of money. I, of course, will be making representations. We've already flagged up in our accounts and so on to the Department of Justice, Department of Finance, that there's still to be defined very significant liability coming from this holiday pay claim. But somewhere there's going to be a negative impact on service delivery because we're going to be paying public servants this extra money. And I have no difficulty with paying it from this point on if that's the rules. And I have no difficulty in paying it with a reasonable reach back into the past. I don't think personally that 20 years is reasonable. The court has decided otherwise. I need to respect the court or appeal the judgment. And I'm sure Mr. Byrne will come to the right decision.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. On behalf of the party as well, George, I think it's fair to say that you've been a straight talker throughout your tenure and have often told us what you really thought, which sometimes has been uncomfortable and challenging. And I actually do agree with you, there has been a failure of political leadership over the last number of years to settle much of of the outstanding matters of the conflict. But you mentioned in your opening remarks about a diverse and representative police service, but yet the trend is one of a downward trend, particularly for representation from the Catholic community. I wonder, have you any parting wise words of judgment, except calling out politicians, which seems to be the case, but I think it's a wider societal debate, and what would you agree with some of that?
Well, the figures aren't going in the wrong direction at the moment, but if we look into the horizon, I think it's about 4 years' time, if we don't do something now, they will start going in the right direction. So Patton talked about a critical mass from the Catholic community of around 30%. We're sitting, as I understand it, just over 32%. Probably because the majority of the leavers get the label of coming from the unionist community, it's keeping the figures looking right, but actually the number of young Catholics coming into the service is not where we want it to be. Both the applicant rate is lower and the success rate for appointment is lower. So that's sort of where we are. We've done and shared with the board the barriers to recruitment, independent research work. That showed, we don't take any delight in this because we would have preferred to have been told big things that we could fix that would resolve this. But actually the results, the news that we got in that was that, yeah, there were some things that we needed to tidy up around process and length of time and online and accessibility and all of that, which were relatively easy hygiene factors for the police to fix. We have fixed those. The big piece that research found in barriers to recruitment, and it was the same, by the way, for loyalist working class areas as well as the Catholic community, was the lack of the barriers. The concern came from within community and close family, and even if it wasn't proactive discouragement, there was a lack of advocacy. So whereas in other communities, policing was seen as a noble profession, a good thing that you might want to do, lots of opportunities to develop, across into specialisms or up through the organisation in terms of the hierarchy. And it wasn't regarded in that way, particularly in the Catholic community and in some working class loyalist areas. So we need to address that to encourage people from right across our communities to apply. Us being fully representative is really important, not just from a legitimacy point of view. It gives us legitimacy if we're more representative, but in terms of the mindset, the thinking, the psyche of the organisation, we're actually better placed to be more operationally competent if we are truly representative. So there's lots of things that we will be working on, and Yvonne and others have done fantastic work on this. We recognise that whilst budgets are shrinking and schools programmes have been limited because of reducing budgets, we need to get back into schools to normalise policing as a profession. So we're not going with a hard pitch to recruit 10-year-olds, but we do need to do something to get into schools so that children from a young age start to see police officers as humans, as interesting people, as public servants, as somebody who could be regarded and respected, and a career to be aspired to. So we're going to do some pieces around that. But we also need people to come out and advocate for a career in policing. There's been some great examples of this. The GAA, for example, have been unequivocal, have been clear, and some of the conversations I have had with senior officials have been really insightful, because it's been along the lines of, if you're going to wait until policing is perfect before you start advocating, it'll never be perfect, because it's a human endeavour. People make mistakes. There's some, not many, there's some lazy people in there. There's some people with prejudice that manifests itself. Policing is a human endeavour. If you're waiting for it to be absolutely perfect, there'll always be an excuse not to advocate for a career in policing. So I think we need people in civic, faith, political, sporting, the whole broad range, business, the whole range of civic leadership needs to be not just supporting the rule of law, because I think broadly the peace process has brought us to a point where that is the case, and not objecting to a career in policing, but we need to move beyond that and turn the switch one more notch to the right to say, policing career is a good thing to do. It's a noble profession. You'll be held to account. It's good public service, and we need that to happen. And then, of course, there is the big issue around 50-50 as a tactical option. Our position on that is very clear. We're not opposed to it. We're not intimidated by it. We think strategically it was the right thing to do to address the massive imbalance of 8% of the Catholic community and brought us in 10 years to 30%. That was strategically the right thing to do. We acknowledge that a backlash into the PUL community, and people got those letters saying you achieved the standard, but you're in the wrong bucket, basically, and that didn't feel right for them. But strategically, it was the right thing to do. Now, where we as an organisation stand on this today is we see it as a political option. We're not going to get drawn into that. We think it should be on the table as part of the range of discussions that people in political leadership can think about doing to make sure their police service is representative. But it's ultimately a political decision. We think it should be available. Historically, it's been the right thing to do. But you see, even if we jump to that easy option now, all of the other things still apply, because whatever the period of derogation is from that pure merit principle, whether it be 5 years or 10 years, to try to really kickstart this representativeness within the Catholic community and the policing, at some point it'll come to an end, because it can only be a short-term measure. And then we'll be having this discussion all over again about, is it the time now for, civic nationalism to get in behind a career in policing? And I'm thinking we should have that conversation now, and if the parties want to agree around something to do with 50-50, or the governments, or whoever are the people who have that political authority, so be it. The police service is not intimidated by it. We embraced it the last time round. We welcomed those people into this organisation, and it has made us more representative. But it's not our place to call for it or to advocate for it, but we think it worked before, it should be on the table, and we'll leave the politicians to it.
John?
Sure, thank you. I'm aware we're well over time. I'll be as quick as I can. I'll apologise in advance for not getting some of the detail of what I intended to ask, but I had hoped that today would be more about policing and less about politics. Can I, Chair, through you, put on record on behalf of the Alliance Party a very sincere thank you to the Chief Constable for, more than anything else, a lifetime in policing and his obvious interest in doing his bit in keeping people safe, putting it in the simplest terms. Can I say in relation to the Chief Constable, to his time in that role, that his straightforward approach, his openness in dealing with subjects and in dealing with, publicly dealing with difficult topics, and also his willingness to engage have not gone unnoticed, and for all of those aspects and for so very much more, we are always very grateful. Thank you, George, for that. Looking over the report, George, your latest report to the policing board here today, there are some positive aspects, particularly in relation to antisocial behaviour and reduction in of burglaries. However, there are still some matters for concern. I have raised the issue of hate crime a number of times in the recent past, and will continue to do so. Can I ask if the rise in reported hate crime of 11.4% is reflective of any trend in particular, and also if there's any element of hate crime or sector affected by those hate crime figures on which the PSNI and this board could be working better together?
Okay, John, thank you for your kind comments, first of all. Much appreciated. Yes, I'm going to ask Mark to address this. He leads on hate crime for PSNI, but he also leads at a UK level for National Police Chiefs Council, and we do take his counsel on these matters. The only strategic point that I would make when he's working out, he's going to tell you and answer the real question, is that we know from our engagement with groups, from other pieces of research and literature, that hate crime generally is underreported. So whilst you're talking about 11.4% increase in hate crime, we see that as a positive. Not that there's so many victims, of course, but it gives us some comfort that at least reporting is increasing, because we don't think it necessarily means that there's any less harm out there or any more harm out there. We think that there is something that's going on where people are reporting more hate crime. So I would try to reassure the board and the wider public that the 11% increase isn't necessarily indicative that it's more dangerous out there, but rather this is an area where we know there's massive underreporting. But to your other points around the various categories and how this compares with other places, I'll ask Mark to address that.
Mark, can I ask you to be brief?
So,
if anybody in this room understands what that means.
so race hate crime.
We're nearly ready to finish.
Pardon. So race hate crime remains the highest area of reporting, globally, nationally, and locally. I think with EU exit issues and international terrorism and so forth, there has been a focus particularly on race and religion-based hate crime, and we've seen spikes across the UK at various points in the year in relation to that. However, it would be wrong to say that there is an equal fear and unease across all the categories, be it homophobic hate crime, transgender hate crime, disability, race or religion. What we have seen in the last couple of years is a drop in sectarian hate crime in Northern Ireland because we've had camera interface issues, and I just want to recognise that if we, hopefully, please God, have a quieter summer, that we should have obviously then an associated drop in race hate crime or in sectarian hate crime. I do appreciate the singular issue for you, John, and I'm very happy to engage very formally and informally with you after the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. We'll hold that up as an example. Before I bring the meeting to a close, I just want to hand over briefly to Stephen Mark to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair. And it is it's my privilege to make these remarks, but of course I do so also with a measure of sadness, because I'm talking about a man who I've known for 36 years. Sir George will retire from his role as Chief Constable on completion of his contract at the end of this week. He will have served 5 years in the post of Chief Constable and almost 34 years in the police service, having served in the Royal Ulster Constabulary, Strathclyde Police and the Police Service of Northern Ireland, not to mention 2 years before that served in the Police Cadets. He was the first homegrown Chief Constable of the PSNI to be appointed by the Northern Ireland Policing Board, and his selection 5 years ago was welcomed not only by this board but also by the officers and staff of the PSNI, many of whom knew him personally. They knew of his work ethic, his commitment to serving the community, and his tenacity and sheer determination to get things done. As Chief Constable, George has delivered a clear vision for policing, the organisational purpose of keeping people safe through policing with the community, has been embedded into every aspect of policing within the PSNI during his tenure. He has remarked earlier in this meeting that his leadership coincided with the most financially turbulent period in the PSNI's history. And despite the budget cuts, he ensured that the organisation's focus remained on areas of high risk and vulnerability. Crime has remained comparatively low, and independent surveys continue to show high levels of confidence in policing. PSNI's success during this period has been acknowledged by the recent inspections by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services. Throughout his tenure, George has been committed to the development of a partnership agenda in Northern Ireland, not only in the policing and justice arena, but also across public services more generally, on issues such as mental health and custody health care. Policing is a noble endeavour, but it is not an easy endeavour. George has never shied away from the many challenges that he has been presented with, whether it has been the challenge of dealing with the past, as we've heard, declining budgets, or a lack of local government in the face of an EU exit. Board members will be familiar with his straightforward manner and his unique ability to cut through the complexity we are often surrounded with and simply see and say things just as they are. I believe this authentic approach that George brought to the role of Chief Constable went a long way to supporting more effective transparency and accountability in policing. Within the PSNI, George led authoritatively, yet modestly. He led seriously, yet with a good sprinkling of appropriate humour, and he led with compassion and an understanding for the individual. His genuine interest in and care and support for our police widows and the wider welfare family has been consistent and is a mark of the man. So, Sir George, on behalf of the police service, I want to say to you today, thank you for all that you've done, not just as Chief Constable, but throughout your 34 years in the police service. We will miss you, but we sincerely wish you and your family well with whatever path you choose to follow next.
Thank you very much. Not left for me to say, but I have to say it on behalf of the board. I know people have already given some individual good wishes, but on behalf of the board, I do want to place on record our thanks to you for your service during your career, and particularly in the last 5 years, but we've got to know each other fairly well. As a Chief Constable, you've been a very strong advocate for the importance of civic oversight of policing, and that's evidenced in your opening remarks, and you understood the importance in building confidence in the service through that. It's not always a comfortable thing, the oversight and accountability, but it has been a central element of police reforms, and I can say, hand on heart, that you have been a vocal supporter, both in your dealings with me personally, with the board, and to your officers and staff, and to the wider society more generally. You have always spoken about accountability and the need for it. And as you pointed out, even in the 2 years when you didn't have to come, you still came along and presented what was good, which I think was very admirable and kept us all going. Your mantra as Chief Constable is centred on the importance of service to the community, and I hope many people have referenced that, and of the policing with the community, and to keeping people safe. And there's not a police officer in Northern Ireland won't remind you that that's what they do, to keep people safe. You get teased about it. It is an issue that's been clearly with you throughout your policing career. Also, I think collaborative decision making has been something that we will remember you for, because you, particularly in your desire for public services to work together, to intervene with people who have mental health issues or vulnerability or drug or alcohol, whatever, you've worked tirelessly and have actually succeeded in making fabulous change in that area. So very well done for that, because that's marvellous. So as you hang up your proverbial policing boots, we wish you and your beautiful family everything for the future, every good wish, and we thank you very much for your public service. It's going to be very strange being here in September and looking across there and you're not being there. Thank you very much. You might well be. You might well be. Thank you very much. We do appreciate everything you've done for us. Thank you. I'm not sure if that's it. You're telling me that you've got a new job.
I don't want to prolong things further, other than to say thank you for those kind comments. the authenticity word is important. I meant it when I said I was committed to transparency and accountability, and this board has given us the platform to show that. And I know we've still a job of work to do, or these people staying behind have a job of work to do around building communities and places where there's building confidence in communities where there's still a deficit. But by and large, we can't ignore the broad figures, and it's all going in the right direction. And I think that is because of the work that this board has done, holding us to account, and likewise me and this team putting ourselves out there and trying to be as open, as transparent, as accountable as we possibly can. So thank you for the kind comments, and it's been a privilege to be Chief Constable. Thank you.